Well, good morning and welcome. We're up to session number 25 of Contagious Care, and we're going to be talking today about Can I Trust You? First of all, I mentioned the fact that it's actually the silver jubilee of this sessions. So I'd like to start with a shout out to Heather. What a joy it's been watching this developing right from its initial days of a little vision in the middle of the night, heading on now to 25 sessions with our tribe. So welcome indeed. And thanks so much to Heather, who lives her life in Technicolor. And we are indeed blessed to have her in our lives. Now, I'm John McAlpine. You haven't seen me before. I've been, shall we say, behind the scenes. So I do have an important role to play. The first role I have to do is I have to pick the paintings and move them from behind. And you'll notice behind the backdrop shows a picture of us in Antarctica. And that'll become a bit more obvious with the symbolism of that as time goes by. Now, I'm also an example for what a good husband does, and you hear lots of stories about that. And I also turn out to be an example of what a bad husband's actions can be. So even though you haven't met me before, you'll probably be quite familiar with what is going on in my life. For example, you may be aware of the fact that when I turned 50, I had a midlife crisis. Now, thankfully, it was a planned midlife crisis. I had to decide whether I would get a red sports car or a new wife, and I decided in the end that I'd wear my underpants inside out. And that was a very safe and wise midlife crisis that I had. You might probably know too much information about me from previous episodes. You may indeed know how Heather comforted me during my vasectomy. If that's a bit of an interesting journey for you, you might have to go back over previous episodes to discover the actual details of it. So I haven't met you all, but you probably know more about me than you want to know. I'd like to start this morning by a question to you all. What would happen if every 6 months you went to the dentist and had a special professional tooth clean every 6 months, but the rest of the time you didn't touch your teeth whatsoever? What do you think, folks, would happen if that was the case? 6 monthly dentist visits, but no toothbrush for the rest of the time. Any thoughts from the tribe? As you're thinking about that, we often hear people say, I don't know why, but I just don't trust him. Have you heard that yourselves? You just don't trust him. You don't know why. And often we're going to explore why trust is important to us and how we can regain it when we lose it. Now, this is not just trust between couples in relationships. This is trust between couples, between friends, between children, or even being able to trust ourselves again after we've stuffed up badly. Okay, folks, here comes Rachel. Welcome, Rachel. Welcome, Alison and Rhonda. Rachel says you'd get some fillings most likely. That's true. If you only go to the dentist every 6 months and do nothing else, probably you'd find out you're going to get some fillings. And Carol Simmons says that teeth will probably fall out. And that's a very profound one as well, isn't it? So trust reminds me about going to the dentist. Now, not only are you going to trust the fact that they take the right tooth out, but just imagine if you only had your dental care every 6 months and nothing else in between, what effect that would have on your teeth. So it's not the memorable, oh, Tony says rot, William says bad breath. So that's right, it's not the memorable things that happen that bring trust. It's the little things that happen from day to day that build up. Every time you clean your teeth, you probably think, oh, that didn't make any difference, my teeth still look the same. But doing those small, regular things over and over again is what keeps our teeth safe and stops them from falling out. And that's the same with trust. Trust is like a collection of small daily gestures It's kind words. It's secrets that have been kept. It's sorry, we're just going to get Heather to shut the blinds because they're banging a bit. But in our relationships, we have a daily opportunity to build trusting relationships. You need to do small, good deeds every day and avoid equally big stuff-ups that empty our jar of trust. Tony mentions the relationship with the dentist might be in trouble as well. Yes, that's right. You probably get a serve every time you come to the dentist and you find that your teeth have fallen out in between times. So when we choose not to connect, when there's an opportunity to do so, there's a moment of betrayal. For example, before COVID, when we actually had people come around to our house, we had a couple around, and the whole night the guy was on his phone. He had it in his hand. He'd look at it every 20 minutes or so. He'd put it back down again, quickly look at it again. So there were three of us connecting, but he wasn't connecting in any way at all. And we actually felt insignificant. And we also felt unimportant. And this happens often. So we trust those people, our loved ones, that build up a store of trust moments with us. And Brené Brown, in her book Rising Strong, talks about the fact that when we're trusting, we're raising and braving connection with somebody. Now, sometimes it's really hard for us to know why we've lost trust in someone or why we're not trusting ourselves with our actions. So it's helpful to break down trust into the various components. And one way that's helpful to do that is describing the types of trust using the mnemonic braving. Now, I've got that up here on the board for you. Here we go. Braving. Okay, these are the different aspects of trust. And if you can't trust somebody, you can reflect on which part of these is not working out for you. Now, I picked the backdrop today because it shows us in Antarctica. And we're actually braving the elements at the end of the world. So you can just imagine us as we're struggling through sub-zero temperatures, even though it looked pretty sunny in those pictures, but we're actually braving. And that's what we're going to be doing today when we're learning about trust. Now, the first part of trust is boundaries. Now, some of the primary school teachers amongst us might notice the fact that I had a bit of a boundary issue with how I spelt boundaries, but you can take that into account. So the first one we need to talk about is boundaries. There's no trust without boundaries. And you know me, you respect my boundaries. If you aren't clear on what's right or what's okay, you ask me. So that's the summary of boundaries. Ask if you don't know. Now, boundary seems a pretty negative word, doesn't it, really? It seems like it's barbed wire, like you're in a cage or like in a prison and there's like a barbed wire fence. But it's more than that. Boundaries are protective. They not only keep people in, but they also keep people out or protect you from outside influences. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to New Zealand, but I think that you would find that you got really narrow, windy roads up into the mountain, and then there's very few, if any, fences down the side. So you're busy driving along with hairpin bends and such and huge drops down the side, and there's no fences at all, pretty much. Now, it may well be that the New Zealanders think that the locals know where the bends are, or maybe they think there's so many tourists go there they don't mind losing a few over the side. But either way, you're missing that sense of a boundary between you and danger. Now, when you go to the shops, you lock your car. In the good old days before COVID, if you went, had people around, or when you went out of your house, you'd lock your house. But you're doing those things to protect replaceable physical items. What are you doing to try and keep a boundary around your relationship, the precious relationships between your couples, between your children, or between your friends? What are you doing to protect those boundaries? Now, we've had to put some boundaries around our relationship over the years, and one of the ones we learned up early is that we need to put a boundary around talking with other people of the opposite sex about what's happening in their relationships. And this was brought up very really and quickly to us in the first year of our marriage. Heather was in her first job, and during the lunch breaks, she talked with a male colleague, and he was telling her all about how bad his relationship with his wife was. Heather was trying to be the concerned, interested colleague and trying to help and support him any way that she could. What happened then, unexpectedly to Heather, is all of a sudden that he went to try and kiss her and said how much he cared for her. Now, as you can imagine, this was totally devastating for Heather, and she came home totally upset and mortified with the whole situation. And we talked it through, and we supported each other through it. We actually, as a couple, went and spoke to the guy, and we learned very quickly that this was an important boundary that we had set. Heather, young in her professional career, had thought she was doing the right thing by being kind and attentive to somebody else. But quickly, she learnt the fact that this boundary could have been stepped over, so she had to make a firm boundary. And we learnt that that male person had to actually talk about what's happening in his relationship with another male. He didn't have to talk at all with Heather about it, and Heather didn't have to keep him being attentive and warm towards him while that was happening. So we've had other boundaries we've had to set in our relationship as well. Another boundary we've decided on is we have to agree to keep the other one all the time in the loop about what's happening, where we're going, what we're doing, who we're meeting. So we always know and can be aware of what the other person's doing. Now, an interesting thing we also have to do is a physical boundary. And say, for example, that if I'm on the throne doing a natural biological function, it's not the time to continue on with a personal discussion, not the time for Heather to wander in and brush her teeth and such. There needs to be still a mystery that we can try and maintain in spite of that going on. So there's actually a physical boundary that we're having to set as well. Now, in all relationships, be it family or friends, new situations arise. And if we're not sure how a decision is going to affect our friend or partner, we have to ask them. We have to commit to check out with them. So we have to say, look, I'm thinking of doing this, or this has happened. What do you think about it? How do you feel about that? So that's number one, B for boundaries. The second number is R for reliability. I can only trust you if you do what you say you'll do again and again. So let me ask you as the tribe, what actions do your partner, family or friends do regularly that build trust? If you could put that in the chat box. What actions do your partner, family or friends do regularly that build trust? Now, for me, a growing edge has been locking the doors of a night. And in the past, I'd be lying in my nice warm bed and Heather would come in and say, have you locked the doors? Now, I know that, I should be locking the doors because early on I said that would be something that I'd be able to do. But often I became very lazy and slack about it. And I'd have to get out of my warm bed, thinking negative thoughts about Heather and the situation, and go and check the doors. Now, it really helped me to know the fact that Heather wasn't just having some fetish about door locking that she was putting onto me, but all of her growing up life, she saw her dad going around and checking the doors. And when he did that, she felt protected and safe. And she felt that this was a warm and secure environment that she was in. And it turned out that every time I didn't check the doors, when I said I would, she didn't feel as though she was being safe and I wasn't protecting her. So that gave me a big incentive to try and check the doors each night. And the challenge is that I'm not always that successful in remembering that or doing that. So a big part of trust is if I say I'm going to check the doors, I actually do it. And something we're working towards is the fact that eventually Heather won't even need to double check the doors because she knows I've done it in advance. So the summary is, let our yes be yes and our no be no. Angela's written in that integrity and transparency are important in building trust in relationships. That's true. Being transparent, people knowing what we feel, what we're doing, what we're saying. And Rebecca commented too, the fact that not just partners have issues with the throne boundary, that her daughter also struggles with the fact of having some degree of personal boundaries and space. Now the next one is A, for accountability. I can only trust you if when you make a mistake, you're willing to own it, apologise for it, and make amends. Now I won't talk much about this today because Heather's got more episodes coming up on power of apology and the importance of actually saying you're sorry, and forgiveness in relationships. But we need to recognise that when we stuff up, we need to share this with the offended person in a way that they understand it. And that's a crucial thing to develop trust. If we stuff up, we need to be able to work out some way we can say we're sorry, to seek reconciliation, and to seek forgiveness. Now, the third one is number V. V for vault. And this is, my life and the things I share are in confidence with you and they're safe with you. You don't share information or experiences that I tell you with others. You totally respect what I tell you. You can all relate to times in social events where someone's giving a bit of a mild gossip about someone else, and you chip in your little bit as well, just to show them that you're on side, you're part of the group. The challenge is that we know so much about our partner, we know so much about our friends, and it's such an easy temptation to let things slip out that we shouldn't. What you need to imagine is your vault. Just imagine you've got the bank with a huge safe and it's got all the dials and the keys and locks on the front, and that's your vault. The things that your partner or friends tell you gets locked in the vault and it can't come out. And that's an important part of building trust. The fact that you know whatever your partner tells you is going to stay in there and not come out. Now I'd like to share a bizarre dream I had. Now, it was sort of a nightmare, really, and thankfully it only happened the once. And even though this is a family show, I'll just inform you in general terms what happened. I was on a ward round with our son Matt in Mount Beauty with the other doctors seeing patients. Then for some reason I noticed that a much loved and important part of my anatomy had fallen off. As you can imagine, this was quite concerning. So I excused myself from the ward round and said, look, I've had a wardrobe malfunction. I have to actually leave the ward round. And so I left the ward round, I found the offending organ, and I was just about to drive in the car to the nearest hospital to have it reattached when I woke up. Now, I must admit, that was pretty bizarre, wasn't it? Yeah, I think it was pretty bizarre, golly. Now, when I told Heather about this, she didn't do her customary responding with understanding marriage counsellor approach. She actually thought it was hysterically funny. Yeah, okay, I get that. But subsequently, she was quite sympathetic and understanding that this could indeed be a traumatic event. And although she did go on to say a bit of a psychological assessment, saying, well, perhaps as I'm retiring less and less from being a doctor, maybe I'm being demasculinated. But be that as it may, she responded with understanding after being hysterical. But the important thing was, she stored that information in her vault. Just imagine what I would have felt if the next time we went up to our cycling group with all our other cycling buddies, and all these blokes come up to me and go, nudge, nudge, John, I hear that you've forgotten something. Or they say, hi, Shorty, how you going? Or left in a hurry and you left something behind. Just imagine how I would have felt if those secrets from the vault got freely described and exposed to people of our friendships. So we need to make sure, if we're talking about what's happening in our relationships, that we don't break our partner's confidence. And one of the things we've discovered is that if we're going to be talking about negative parts of our marriage, we actually pick someone who is what we call a friend of the marriage. Someone who's got our best interests at heart, someone who has got our marriage's best interests at heart. So we don't actually tell our old friend from school, who would then reply, see, I told you shouldn't have married him, or I always said he was no good. We don't pick people that are going to try and align with us and say how bad our partner is. We need to pick someone who's going to respect us, respect our marriage, and do the best for us and our marriage. Now, the next one is I for integrity. This is choosing courage over comfort, choosing what's right over what's fun, fast and easy, practicing your values, not just professing your values. You could summarise it by meaning do what is right, even when it's difficult. That's what integrity means. Do what is right, even when it is difficult. Now, in our relationships, we see each other in our best and worst. We see each other in the best mountaintop experiences. We also see each other when we're in the pits. And we need to develop trust in our partner or our friends, knowing that their action and behaviour matches their expressed value. They need to see that when the rubber hits the road, what we say is what we'll do. Now, just to give an example of that, a number of years back when we were on family holidays, I backed into the fence outside a cafe. So there was the big crash. Everyone looked around, everyone looked at each other. Then there were 3 sets of eyes in the back seat. They were all watching me. And they're saying and thinking to themselves, they didn't say anything, I guess they were in shock, thinking to themselves, does he walk the walk? Does he talk the talk? He talks the talk, does he walk the walk? What's he going to do? He's taught us about doing the right thing and respecting others and being law-abiding, etc., etc. Is he going to now then drive off in a puff of smoke and leave the mess behind? This was an opportunity to show integrity. So I did in fact leave a note. In fact, and thankfully not too much came of it in the end. This compares itself to another story I heard about a chap who came back in the car park at the shopping centre and he found a big dent in the side of his car. And there was a note underneath the windscreen. And he opened up the note and it said this: there's 12 people around here thinking that I'm leaving my name and address after running into your car. Well, I'm not. I guess there's a bit of a defect in integrity just like that, eh? So that's integrity. The next one is N for non-judgment. Another aspect of developing top quality trust is being non-judgmental with each other. Often in life we struggle. Often in life we have thoughts that we don't want, situations we're in that we can't handle. We need to be able to ask each other for help. We need to talk about how we're feeling without feeling judged. In order to be real with each other, we need to create a safe place that welcomes openness. So the question is, how can we be open with each other? How can we develop acceptance and empathy? Heather talks more about communication, but one way we can look at that is if we see a friend and they say they're not coping or they're really struggling, it's not our job as their friend to say, buck up, she'll be right, mate, pull yourself together, could be worse, there's others much more worse than you. We need support, we need encouragement. And one way of building our trust is showing that we can be non-judgmental with each other. Now, a final way is G for I'm doing Heather's trick of having things upside down, inside out. I've learned a lot from my mentor. Okay, here we go. G for generosity. Generosity is this. Our relationship is only a trusting relationship if you can assume the most generous things about my words, intentions, and behaviours, and then check them out with me. So we have to go from a default position of thinking the best of the other person, and then if we're not thinking the best, to check out with them. What happened? What went wrong? What were you feeling? What were you thinking? Why are you responding in a way that's not like normal for you? But to have a default position that the other person actually is working out of a sense of goodwill and a sense of having generous thoughts and ideas. Let me explain that a bit further to you. Now, someone told me that the average person speaks 200 words a minute, but they think at 6 times that speed. They actually speak, they think 1,300 words a minute. So you can speak 200, 300, but you're actually thinking 1,300 words a minute. And someone, I don't know how, figured out that each of us have 45,000 thoughts that go through our mind every day. Just imagine that, 45,000 thoughts that go through our minds. Some are good, some are bad, some are uplifting, some are totally bizarre. Some are really embarrassing thoughts. But they all go through our mind every single day. Now, to give you an example, who likes sushi? The South Coasters struggle a bit with sushi, but finally, for the first time about a decade ago, we were so excited because a sushi train restaurant came to Wollongong. And it's helpful to imagine our thoughts are like the sushi train. Just imagine you're sitting there and dish after dish comes past, like a train, a big long train of dishes going out further and further, back out into the kitchen. And there's a constant and changing array of things we can possibly drink, things we can possibly eat. And the challenge is this: the more we pick from the conveyor belt, the kitchen thinks, aha, there's empty spaces, and they spring into action and make even more. So there's a constant flow of thoughts. The more we pick at, the more we examine, the more come to take their place. And one of the traps is, if you overthink things and you pick up every thought and you examine every thought, you spend so much time doing it. As Angela says, with so many daily thoughts, no wonder we get tired. Well, that's very true. With so many daily thoughts, no wonder our brain gets into overload. Now, I don't know if you remember the phrase, for those who are cricket followers, let that one go through to the keeper. Anyone remember that? That the batsman's there, and if the ball's not going to get him out and he can't score any runs from it, he just moves his bat away and it goes straight through to the keeper. He doesn't offer a shot. And our challenge is to actually let thoughts go through to the keeper. To see, oh, that was a bizarre one. I'll let that one go through. I'm not going to look into that one anymore. Let that one go through to the keeper. That's something that we can each do to try and counter just so many bizarre thoughts that come through. Now, sometimes in our relationships, the sushi train gets stuck in like a loop, like a negative thought loop. Just imagine this. Say your partner did something which was really selfish. Said something, did something, put you down in public, didn't have any attention or desire to look after you and your thoughts or your feelings. Just imagine they did that. What can sometimes happen then is that you're sitting there watching all the sushi thoughts go past, and you keep looking out for the ones that are selfish. Say, for example, in the sushi train, if you're only going to pick out dishes on a green dish, every single dish that comes by on the green dish you'd pick out, but all the other ones on the different coloured dishes and such, you'd ignore them. So if you're just looking out for, if your partner's been selfish to you, and you're busy looking out for every other selfish thing that they do, And you pick that out, you pick that off the sushi train. Every other time he or she's been loving or kind or looking out for you or being respectful, you don't see those. You let them go right through to the keeper without playing a shot. You don't pick them up. You're only looking for the green plate. You're only looking for the selfish plate. And every time that comes up, you say to yourself, that proves it. I've married the selfish person, most selfish person in the whole world. Look, he's done it again. She has done another selfish action that just confirms what I'm thinking about them. That friend of mine, that was selfish. She's always selfish. I only pick up the selfish things. So it's a challenge to work out how we can change our thinking about our partner, our thinking about our friends, rather than keeping negative thoughts recycling around and around in our brain. The Bible's got a great quote in Philippians, and it says this: I'd say you do your best by filling your minds and meditating on things that are true, noble, reputable, authentic, compelling, and gracious. Fill your minds and meditate on things which are true, noble, reputable, authentic, compelling, and gracious. Think about the best, not the worst. The beautiful, not the ugly. Things to praise, not things to curse. Each of us in our relationships need to head in this direction. Every time we have a choice between thinking a generous and gracious thought about somebody, we have to make sure we do that rather than thinking about a negative or an ugly thought. Each time is a choice. We have a choice what thoughts we take off the sushi train. We have a choice about thoughts we examine. We have a choice about what thoughts that we focus on. So today in our time together, I've talked to you about the components of trust. Every time that you think that you can't trust someone, or you've lost trust, or you've lost trust in yourself after doing a action that you're not proud of, you can think about these components. You know, is it the fact that you're lacking boundaries? Is it the fact that they weren't reliable? Is it the fact that they weren't accountable? They didn't say they were sorry? Is it the fact that they broke confidence and didn't store your confidences in their vault? Is it the fact that they lacked integrity, that their words didn't match up with their actions? Is it the fact that they were judgmental and critical when you raised a concern with them? Or is it the fact that you didn't show generosity to others, or they didn't show generosity to you? So I'm going to finish with a story from Brené Brown's book. She explained that trust is a lot like a jar of marbles. And in her daughter's classroom, they used to have a jar, and every time the kids did a good action, they were cooperative or helpful, she'd put marbles in the jar. Every time that they were ratty or loud or annoying, she'd take marbles out. When the jar got full of marbles, there'd be some special event for the whole class. They'd go to McDonald's, for example. Now, one time, her daughter came home after school really upset because she'd lost trust in some of her friends because of what they said to her. And Brené explained the fact that our trust is like the marble jar. That in our relationships, through constant, kind, regular events, we get marbles put into our jar, which fill it up. But when negative things happen, slowly, daily, negative actions, the marbles get taken out and our trust goes down. And so when hard stories come our way, when hard times come, and our friends are there to share them with us, we develop our trust. And our marble jar of trust is fed up, is filled up. Williams reminded us here that he puts a speed hump in place. So when he gets a negative thought that hits the speed hump, then I have a decision to go, to actually decide what to do about it. And that's a very wise comment. Before we go to pick up the things off the sushi train, we need to think, oh man, do I need another dish? Am I not full? Do I need to keep going here? Can I have a break? Do I have to keep picking up every single one that comes out? Very true. So it's the small, repetitive goodwill actions to others that fill the trust jar of those around you. So I really valued my first opportunity to do a podcast. You can put a love heart if you enjoyed it. You can put a thumbs down if you'd rather have Heather next time. But in the meantime, be wise, be warm, be trustworthy. May you fill your trust jar and the trust jar of those around with regular, small, loving deposits. Bye for now.